Sunrise el viaje más peligroso del viaje oeste, Western en película, a guion y drama in Espanol. Among them was Samuel Ortega, a man known throughout the town for his courage and skill with horses. Samuel had grown up in these harsh lands, learning early how to survive the unforgiving wilderness of the Old West. His lean frame and sun-browned skin told the story of someone who had spent years under the relentless sun, riding through canyons, deserts, and treacherous terrain. Samuel was not just any traveler, he was a man of honor and principle. Even though life had been harsh on him, he never lost his sense of responsibility. Today, however, he faced a task unlike any he had encountered before. A wealthy merchant from a neighboring town had entrusted him with a dangerous mission: to transport a cargo of gold and essential supplies across the wild lands to a settlement far to the west. The journey would take him through rugged canyons, dry riverbeds, and dense forests, places where bandits often waited for unsuspecting travelers, and where nature itself could be an enemy. As Samuel prepared for his journey, the townsfolk watched him with a mixture of respect and worry. Some whispered that no man could survive the route he was about to take. Others shook their heads, muttering that Samuel's courage would either make him a legend or leave his name forgotten in the sands of the desert. But Samuel paid little attention to the talk. He had learned long ago that fear and worry could slow a man down, and that survival required clear thinking, courage, and trust in one's instincts. Before leaving, Samuel walked to the modest home of his sister, Elena Ortega. Elena was younger than Samuel, with sharp eyes and a quiet strength that matched her brother's in its own way. She had always been the one to care for him when their parents had passed away, and despite her calm demeanor, she felt the weight of worry for Samuel now. "Elena," Samuel said softly as he entered the small wooden house, "I have to do this. The town and the merchant are counting on me, but I promise I will return safely." She wanted to believe him, yet the danger of the mission was clear on his face. From her neck, she removed a small leather pouch containing a simple charm, a family heirloom that had been passed down through generations. "Take this," she said, placing it around his neck. "It won't keep danger away, but it will remind you of home. Remember, Samuel, courage isn't just about facing danger. It's about doing what's right, even when the world is against you." With preparations complete, Samuel mounted his horse, a strong and steady stallion named Shadow. Shadow had been his companion for years, knowing Samuel's habits, moods, and instincts. The horse neighed softly, as if sensing the gravity of the journey ahead. Samuel patted Shadow's neck and took a deep breath, glancing at the horizon where the golden sun hung low, promising a long and arduous day. The first miles of the journey were familiar. Samuel rode along trails he had traveled many times before, paths lined with sagebrush, dry grasses, and the occasional twisted tree. The wind was hot and dry, carrying the faint smell of dust and earth. As he rode, Samuel thought about the road ahead, imagining the dangers that awaited him, the possibility of storms, the threat of bandits, and the treacherous terrain that could turn a simple journey into a life-or-death struggle. But Samuel also thought about the people waiting for him at the settlement, the families depending on the gold and supplies for their survival. That thought gave him strength, fueling his determination to press forward. As the sun climbed higher, the landscape began to change. The flat plains gave way to rocky hills and narrow canyons. Samuel had to guide Shadow carefully over uneven ground, leaping over small streams and dodging loose rocks. The horse moved with grace and precision, their bond evident in the way they navigated the treacherous terrain together. The air was filled with the sound of hooves striking the hard earth, the wind whistling through the canyons, and the occasional distant call of a hawk circling above. By midday, Samuel stopped at a small watering hole, a rare oasis in the arid land. He tethered Shadow to a tree and filled a leather canteen with fresh water. Sitting on a rock, he allowed himself a brief moment of rest, taking in the vastness of the wilderness around him. It was beautiful, in its own harsh and unforgiving way, but Samuel knew that beauty could be deceiving. A sudden flash flood, a hidden snake, or an unseen bandit could turn this moment of peace into chaos in seconds. While resting, Samuel remembered his father's words from long ago. "The West does not forgive carelessness, Samuel. Respect the land, respect the animals, respect the people, and you may survive. Forget any of that and the land will teach you harsh lessons." Those lessons were ingrained in Samuel, guiding him through countless challenges. He checked the cargo, ensuring that the gold was secure and the supplies were properly packed. Everything had to be perfect. A small mistake could cost him his life. As the afternoon sun began to dip, casting long shadows across the rocky landscape, Samuel continued his journey. The path grew narrower, winding through cliffs and over small ridges. The terrain tested both man and horse, forcing them to move carefully and deliberately. Samuel's eyes scanned the surroundings constantly, alert for movement in the shadows, listening for the slightest sound that could signal danger. He knew that outlaws often used these narrow passes to ambush travelers, and he would not be caught unprepared. Despite the danger, Samuel also found moments of wonder. The sky blazed with shades of orange and pink as the sun began its descent, and the canyon walls glowed in the evening light. He marveled at the sheer cliffs, the jagged rocks, and the occasional glimpse of wildlife. A deer bounding across a ridge, a hawk swooping low, or a coyote observing him from a distance. These glimpses reminded him that life persisted, even in the harshest environments, and that courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward despite it. As night approached, Samuel found a small, sheltered spot to camp. He built a fire, careful to keep it contained and low, knowing that light could attract unwanted attention. The fire's warm glow reflected on his determined face, illuminating the seriousness of his task. While cooking a simple meal, Samuel allowed himself a moment to reflect on the journey ahead. He knew that the first day was only the beginning, and that the days to come would be far more challenging. Lying beside the fire, Samuel thought about the people he was helping, about his sister waiting for his safe return, and about the trust the merchant had placed in him. These thoughts filled him with a quiet resolve. He could not fail, not because of gold or reward, but because he carried the weight of responsibility, and with it, a sense of honor that defined him. As he drifted to sleep under the stars, Samuel felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety. The wilderness was beautiful, but it was also unforgiving. He would need every ounce of skill, courage, and patience to survive the journey. The winds whispered through the canyon, carrying the scent of sage and earth, as if warning him of the challenges to come. But Samuel slept with the confidence that he was prepared, that he had learned from the past, and that he would face whatever came with unwavering determination. The first part of the journey had taught Samuel an important lesson. The Old West was a place of extremes, where beauty and danger existed side by side, and where every decision could mean the difference between life and death. The journey ahead promised trials unlike any he had faced, testing his body, mind, and spirit. But for Samuel Ortega, the adventure had begun, and there was no turning back. He would ride into the unknown, guided by courage, wisdom, and the unbreakable bond with his horse, ready to face the perils of the Old West with determination and honor. The sun rose slowly over the horizon, casting a golden glow across the rugged landscape. Samuel Ortega woke early, his senses already alert. The night had been quiet, but the wilderness was unpredictable, and he knew that dangers often came without warning. Shadow, his loyal horse, shifted beneath him, ready for the new day. Samuel patted the animal's neck and whispered softly, "Time to keep moving, my friend. We have a long way ahead." The cargo he carried was heavy, but he was careful to balance it well, knowing that even a slight misstep could lead to disaster. A few hours into the ride, Samuel spotted smoke rising in the distance. At first, he thought it might be a campfire from another traveler, but as he approached, he realized it came from a small group of people moving through the hills. They were a mixed band of travelers, some on horseback, some walking. Each one carried supplies or personal belongings, their faces showing both determination and fatigue. Samuel slowed Shadow and observed them carefully. He had learned long ago to be cautious. Not everyone he met on these roads could be trusted. Eventually, he approached the group openly, raising his hand in greeting. "Good morning," he called. "I am Samuel Ortega. I am traveling west with important cargo. Perhaps we can help each other on the road ahead. It's safer to travel together, especially through the canyons and hills where outlaws often hide." He introduced himself properly and the group shared their names. Maria, a young woman traveling to reunite with family. Pedro, an older man with experience in hunting and tracking. And Javier, a sharp-eyed man who seemed friendly but carried an air of unease. Despite his instincts telling him to be cautious, Samuel decided to trust them, at least for the moment. The first day with the group passed without incident. They rode together, sharing water, food, and stories of past adventures. Samuel began to notice subtle differences in the group's personalities. Maria was quiet but observant, always noticing things that others missed. Pedro spoke little, but his knowledge of the land was impressive, pointing out safe paths and potential dangers. Javier, however, seemed too eager to please, often asking questions about the cargo Samuel carried. Samuel made a mental note to keep a closer eye on him. As the afternoon sun reached its peak, the group entered a narrow canyon. The walls rose high on either side, casting long shadows across the rocky path. Samuel felt a shiver of caution. Canyons like this were often the perfect place for ambushes. He signaled for the group to slow down and stay alert. Every sound, the scraping of a rock, the call of a bird, the rustle of wind through the canyon walls, was magnified, keeping Samuel's senses on edge. Suddenly, a shadow moved above them. Samuel raised his hand and the group froze. A figure appeared on a ledge barely visible against the sunlit rocks. The figure dropped a small rock which bounced dangerously close to Shadow's hooves. Samuel's heart raced. "Stay calm," he whispered. "Do not panic." He could see that the canyon had several exit points, making it possible for attackers to surround them. He also knew that running blindly could be disastrous. He signaled for the group to spread out, taking positions that would give them both protection and advantage. Luis and Pedro moved strategically, preparing to defend the group. Maria stayed close to Samuel, her eyes wide but determined. Javier's reaction was harder to read. He shifted nervously, glancing between Samuel and the attackers. The standoff lasted tense moments. Then, with precise timing, the attackers revealed themselves, 4 men armed with rifles and pistols, faces covered with scarves. Samuel knew there was no time to waste. He raised his own weapon, taking aim carefully. Shadow shifted beneath him, ready to move at a moment's notice. The attackers fired a warning shot, the bullet striking a rock nearby and sending sparks into the air. Samuel responded swiftly. Using the canyon walls for cover, he and the group fired back, forcing the attackers to retreat temporarily. Pedro's experience proved invaluable. He guided Samuel on the best positions to defend both themselves and the cargo. Luis coordinated the group's movements, ensuring no one was left exposed. Maria, despite her fear, showed remarkable courage, helping to move supplies to safer locations. During the brief exchange, Samuel noticed Javier lingering near the back, his movements suspicious. Samuel's instincts screamed that Javier's loyalty might not be genuine, but there was no time to confront him now. Survival came first, and betrayal would have to wait until they were safe. The attackers finally withdrew, disappearing into the canyon shadows. Samuel allowed himself a moment to breathe, checking the cargo and ensuring everyone was unharmed. The group was shaken but alive. This encounter had reminded them that the wilderness was filled with dangers, both from nature and from men who would do anything for gold or supplies. As the sun began to set, casting a warm orange glow across the canyon walls. Samuel suggested they make camp. They found a small alcove, sheltered from the wind, and began to set up a modest campfire. The group worked together, gathering firewood and securing the cargo. The tension of the day gradually gave way to quiet conversation, each person reflecting on the events and their narrow escape. Around the fire, Samuel shared some of his experiences, telling stories of past journeys and the lessons he had learned. "The West is not forgiving," he said. "Every choice matters. One moment of carelessness and you could lose everything, your supplies, your horse, or even your life. That is why we must be careful, observant, and united." Samuel made a mental note to remain vigilant, knowing that appearances could be deceiving. Night fell, and the desert grew colder. Samuel and the group sat close to the fire, sharing what little food they had and taking turns keeping watch. The stars stretched across the sky, bright and endless, a silent reminder of both the beauty and isolation of the wilderness. Samuel found a quiet moment to reflect on the journey so far. The first encounter with danger had taught him that the mission would not be easy. Every step forward would require skill, courage, and trust in both his instincts and the people traveling with him. The next morning, the group resumed their journey. The terrain grew more rugged, with steep cliffs and loose rocks making progress slow. Samuel stayed at the front, guiding Shadow carefully and scouting the path ahead. The group moved cautiously, aware that another attack could come at any moment. As they rode, Samuel began to notice small signs that suggested Javier might not be entirely honest. He would linger near the cargo, asking subtle questions and watching reactions carefully. Samuel decided to observe him more closely, knowing that if betrayal existed, it would likely happen when they were most vulnerable. Despite the tension, the group also found moments of camaraderie. They shared meals, exchanged stories, and helped each other over difficult terrain. Samuel realized that even in the harshest conditions, people could form bonds that made survival easier. Maria's quiet courage inspired others, Pedro's wisdom guided their path, and Luis's leadership kept everyone coordinated. These small but significant connections gave Samuel hope that they could survive whatever lay ahead. As they neared the end of the second day, the group encountered a river crossing. The current was strong, and the banks were slippery with mud. Samuel dismounted, carefully testing the depth and flow of the water. He instructed the group on the safest way to cross, guiding them step by step. Shadow moved steadily through the water, trusting Samuel's commands. The group followed, some slipping slightly but catching themselves with careful balance. Even the cargo was secured, carried across without incident. After the crossing, Samuel took a moment to survey the landscape. Ahead lay a dense forest, a place that could provide shelter but also conceal hidden dangers. He knew that traveling through the forest would be more challenging than the open plains. Wolves, snakes, or hidden bandits could all pose threats, and visibility would be limited. Yet it was necessary to continue. The settlement was still days away, and stopping too long in one place could be risky. By evening, the group found another sheltered spot to camp. This time, Samuel insisted on taking extra precautions. They built a larger fire, positioned themselves strategically around the perimeter, and kept the cargo close. The events of the previous day had taught them that danger could come swiftly and without warning. Around the fire, Samuel and the group reflected on their journey so far. Each person shared their thoughts, fears, and hopes. The conversation was both comforting and revealing, showing the strengths and vulnerabilities of each member. Samuel realized that trust was a delicate balance. It had to be earned, maintained, and sometimes questioned. As night settled in, Samuel looked at Javier once more. Something about him felt off, but Samuel chose patience over confrontation. The journey was far from over, and now was not the time for conflict within the group. Survival and caution had to come first. Under the wide expanse of the starry sky, Samuel felt a mix of exhaustion and determination. The journey had already tested him in ways he had not anticipated, and he knew that the worst challenges were still ahead. But he also felt a quiet confidence, knowing that with careful planning, courage, and vigilance, he could guide the group safely through the dangers of the Old West. The morning air was crisp and carried the scent of pine and earth as Samuel Ortega and his companions emerged from the forest edge. The past 2 days of travel had left them weary but alert. The cargo of gold and essential supplies rested securely on their horses, but Samuel knew the danger had only grown as they moved deeper into uncharted territory. His instincts, sharpened by years surviving the wilderness, told him that something was approaching, though he could not yet see it. The group advanced cautiously along a narrow trail that wound through steep hills and rocky ridges. Each step required attention, every sound demanding observation. Shadow, Samuel's loyal horse, moved carefully, sensing the tension in his rider. Behind him, the others followed, their faces set in concentration, aware that the Old West was as unpredictable as it was unforgiving. Hours into the journey, Samuel noticed subtle signs of movement in the distance, clouds of dust rising against the horizon. His heart quickened. He signaled for the group to stop and crouched low behind a cluster of boulders. Lewis, the group leader, joined him silently, his eyes scanning the ridge above. "They're coming," Samuel whispered, his voice steady despite the rush of adrenaline. "Bandits, at least 6, maybe more. They're heading straight for us. We can hold them off if we position ourselves carefully, but it will be dangerous." Maria, despite her youthful appearance, moved confidently to a safe but elevated spot, ready to assist. Javier lingered near the cargo, his nervous energy clear, though Samuel suspected his motives were not entirely loyal. As the bandits appeared, their rifles glinting in the morning sun, Samuel felt a surge of determination. He knew this was the moment that would define the journey. The first shots rang out, striking rocks and dirt near the group. Samuel returned fire, careful and precise. The sound of gunfire echoed through the hills, a harsh reminder that survival would demand every ounce of skill, courage, and composure. The attackers pressed forward, attempting to split the group and seize the cargo. Samuel moved with calculated speed, guiding Shadow to block their path while keeping himself protected. Pedro provided steady support, moving among the attackers with careful precision, aiming only when necessary to protect his companions. Lewis coordinated their movements, giving commands that kept the group unified and ready for any maneuver. The fight intensified as the bandits pressed closer. Samuel noticed Javier lingering at the back, his eyes darting toward the cargo with a subtle, calculating expression. Samuel's suspicion flared, but he remained focused on the immediate danger. The attackers were skilled, but the group's preparation, teamwork, and determination allowed them to hold their ground. A sudden flash of movement to Samuel's left drew his attention. One of the bandits had managed to approach from a hidden path, aiming directly for the cargo. Without hesitation, Samuel spurred Shadow forward, intercepting the attacker with a swift, precise movement. The bandit was forced back, his rifle missing its mark. Samuel's courage and quick thinking had saved them once again, but the battle was far from over. As the skirmish continued, the terrain itself became an additional challenge. Loose rocks and uneven ground caused missteps, forcing both attackers and defenders to move carefully. Samuel realized that one wrong move could lead to injury or death, not just for himself but for the entire group. He barked quick instructions, guiding them over the dangerous terrain while fending off incoming attacks. During a brief lull, Samuel caught Javier trying to move the cargo slightly to the side, as if preparing to make a quick escape. Samuel's eyes narrowed and he confronted him directly. "Stay where you are," he shouted. Javier hesitated, then froze, caught in the act. The momentary confrontation reminded Samuel that threats came not only from outside but also from within. Javier's hesitation revealed that loyalty could not be assumed. Vigilance was essential. The bandits, realizing the group's strength and coordination, attempted a final, desperate push. They charged from the ridge, firing indiscriminately. Samuel moved with Shadow, dodging bullets and keeping himself and the cargo safe. Maria assisted from her elevated position, providing covering fire that allowed the group to regroup. Pedro's calm precision prevented any attackers from gaining an advantage. Luis's leadership ensured that no one was left exposed, every movement coordinated with care. In the midst of the chaos, Samuel found himself separated briefly from the group. A bandit lunged from behind a boulder, aiming directly at him. Samuel reacted instinctively, sidestepping and disarming the man with a swift motion. Shadow shifted under him, ready for any sudden movement. The encounter tested Samuel's skill and nerve, but he emerged unscathed, his resolve stronger than ever. By midday, the battle reached its climax. Samuel, using a combination of strategy and courage, managed to corner the remaining bandits. Luis and Pedro flanked them, forcing surrender or retreat. The attackers, realizing they were outmatched, fled into the hills, leaving the group victorious but exhausted. The echoes of gunfire faded, replaced by the sounds of wind through the rocky canyons and the heavy breathing of those who had survived. After ensuring that the cargo remained secure, Samuel gathered the group. They had endured a harrowing ordeal, but their unity and courage had seen them through. Each person bore the marks of the battle, scratches, bruises, and exhaustion, but their spirits remained intact. Samuel looked at each of them, recognizing both the fear and the bravery reflected in their eyes. "Today was a test," Samuel said, his voice calm but firm. "We survived because we worked together. We protected each other and the cargo. But remember, this journey is far from over. Danger will come again, and we must remain vigilant." That evening, the group found a sheltered spot to rest. Samuel carefully inspected the cargo, ensuring that nothing had been tampered with during the battle. Shadow drank from a small stream nearby, and the other travelers set up a modest campfire. The night was quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos of the day. The stars stretched across the sky, twinkling like distant beacons of hope in the vast wilderness. Around the fire, the group shared their thoughts and feelings. Samuel encouraged them to speak openly, to release the tension and fear that had built up during the battle. Maria spoke first, her voice trembling slightly but filled with determination. "I never thought I could face something like today," she admitted. "But with all of you, I felt stronger. I learned that courage isn't about being fearless, it's about facing danger together. We survived because we watched out for each other." Yet they had endured, emerging stronger and more united than before. As the night grew deeper, Samuel took a moment to reflect privately. He thought about the journey ahead, the dangers yet to come, and the responsibilities he carried. He also considered Javier, whose actions had caused tension and doubt. Samuel knew that vigilance was essential. Survival required not only courage but wisdom in judging friend from foe. Despite the exhaustion and the lingering tension, Samuel felt a renewed sense of purpose. The journey had already taught him invaluable lessons. That courage and skill alone were not enough, that trust must be earned, and that the harshness of the West could be met with preparation, strategy, and unity. Before sleep claimed him, Samuel looked at Shadow, who nuzzled him gently. The horse had been a steadfast companion through every trial, and Samuel knew that their bond would be crucial in the challenges to come. With a final glance at the starlit sky, Samuel allowed himself to rest, knowing that tomorrow would bring new trials, but also new opportunities to prove their resilience and determination. The third day of the journey had ended, but the story of survival, courage, and the harsh realities of the Old West was far from over. Samuel Ortega and his companions had faced the first true test of their journey, emerging victorious but wary. Each member of the group had discovered their own strengths and limits, and the experience had forged bonds that would carry them through the challenges ahead. The sun rose over the rugged horizon, painting the landscape in shades of gold and orange. Samuel Ortega and his companions had survived the dangers of the forest, the ambush in the canyon, and the harshness of the wilderness. Yet despite their victories, a quiet tension hung in the air. They were closer than ever to the settlement, but Samuel knew that the final stretch could hold its own dangers. The terrain ahead was unpredictable, and they could not let their guard down. Samuel mounted Shadow, feeling the horse's strength beneath him. The loyal animal had been his steadfast companion through every trial, sensing his thoughts and responding to every command. The rest of the group prepared their horses and gear, each one weary but determined. Today, they would complete the journey, but Samuel reminded himself that the journey's end was not guaranteed until they reached the safety of the settlement. As they moved through a narrow valley, Samuel noticed signs of recent activity: footprints, broken branches, and scattered debris. His instincts told him to be cautious. "Stay alert," he instructed the group. "We are close to our destination, but that makes us more visible. Danger can strike when we least expect it." Shadow's hooves struck the earth lightly, and the others mirrored his pace, aware of the need for silence and vigilance. The landscape shifted as they progressed, moving from dry, rocky ground to rolling hills and sparse trees. The air carried the scent of pine and wildflowers, a brief reminder of beauty amid hardship. Suddenly, a shout echoed through the valley. "Stop, strangers! Hand over the cargo!" Every member of the group quickly positioned themselves, using rocks, trees, and uneven ground as protection. The outlaws fired first, forcing the group to respond with careful, controlled shots. Samuel guided Shadow skillfully, using the horse's agility to maneuver quickly behind cover. Maria, showing her growing courage, assisted by helping load ammunition and providing support where needed. Pedro moved silently, anticipating the attackers' movements, and Luis coordinated their defense with calm authority. Even Javier, whose loyalty had been questionable, acted decisively to protect the cargo, proving that even those with uncertain motives could rise to the occasion when survival demanded it. The battle raged for what felt like hours, though in reality it was only a tense and chaotic span of minutes. Dust rose around them, mixing with the smoke of gunfire and the sounds of shouting. Samuel's mind was sharp, calculating each move, directing the group, and ensuring that every decision protected the cargo and their lives. The attackers were skilled, but they were disorganized, lacking the unity and coordination that Samuel's group had developed through their shared trials. At one point, a bandit attempted to flank them from the ridge above. Samuel spurred Shadow forward, intercepting the man with a precise maneuver that forced him to retreat. The group's careful positioning allowed them to counterattack, pushing the outlaws back and securing a momentary advantage. Samuel realized that their experience from previous skirmishes had prepared them for this final confrontation. The lessons of vigilance, coordination, and courage were paying off. Despite the chaos, Samuel never lost sight of the cargo. The gold and supplies were vital not only for the merchant but for the survival of families at the settlement. He ensured that it remained protected, checking its security while still engaging in the battle. Shadow responded instinctively to his commands, moving with precision and strength, a true partner in the struggle. Finally, the outlaws, realizing they were outmatched, began to retreat. The group pressed forward cautiously, ensuring that no one could regroup for another attack. When the last of the attackers disappeared over a distant ridge, Samuel allowed himself a moment to breathe. The immediate danger had passed, but he knew the journey's emotional and physical toll was significant. The group continued onward, now moving with a mixture of relief and exhaustion. Each step toward the settlement was a step toward safety, but also a reminder of the trials they had faced. Maria rode quietly beside Samuel, her eyes reflecting a mixture of admiration and newfound strength. Pedro and Luis stayed vigilant, ensuring that no hidden threat remained. Even Javier, now quieter and more focused, seemed to understand the importance of unity and responsibility. As they approached the outskirts of the settlement, the landscape began to change. The rough hills gave way to open fields and small clusters of homes. Smoke rose from chimneys, and the sound of daily life reached them, children laughing, livestock moving in pens, and the distant chatter of townsfolk. Samuel's heart lifted. The journey had been long and perilous, but the sight of civilization, safety, and people waiting for their arrival was a powerful reward. When they finally entered the settlement, they were met with both surprise and gratitude. The townspeople had heard rumors of the dangerous journey and the threats that travelers faced on the road. Seeing Samuel and his companions arrive safely, with the cargo intact, inspired admiration and relief. Families approached them, thanking them for their courage and perseverance. Children stared wide-eyed at the travelers, imagining the dangers they had faced and survived. Samuel handed over the gold and supplies to the local authorities and merchants, ensuring that everything reached the people who needed it most. The act was not one of pride but of duty. He understood that true success was measured not by recognition, but by the lives and well-being he had helped preserve. After the deliveries were complete, the group gathered at the edge of the settlement, reflecting on their journey. Each person carried the marks of the adventure, minor injuries, fatigue, and the emotional weight of their experiences. Yet, there was also a sense of accomplishment and unity that bound them together. They had faced danger, betrayal, and the harshness of the wilderness, emerging stronger and wiser. Samuel took a moment to speak to the group. This journey has tested us in ways we could not have imagined. We faced the wilderness, threats from those who sought to harm us, and even doubts within our own group. But we survived because we were united, because we trusted each other, and because we never gave up. The West is harsh and unforgiving, but it also rewards courage, wisdom, and perseverance. Even Javier, whose loyalty had been uncertain, appeared thoughtful, perhaps learning that honor and integrity were as important as survival. As night fell over the settlement, Samuel stood on a small hill overlooking the town. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant hues of red and gold. He reflected on the journey, the dangers they had faced, and the lessons learned. Courage, he realized, was not simply facing danger but doing so with careful thought, determination, and compassion. Trust was earned, loyalty was tested, and the bonds formed in adversity could carry a person through even the harshest trials. Samuel thought of his sister, Elena, and the charm she had given him before the journey. It had been a symbol of love, protection, and hope. He felt a deep sense of gratitude for her and for the strength she had inspired in him. The challenges of the journey had shaped him, leaving both scars and wisdom that he would carry forever. In the quiet of the evening, Samuel walked among the townsfolk, listening to their stories, offering guidance and sharing a smile. Shadow stood patiently by his side, faithful as ever. The journey had tested them all, but it had also strengthened them, revealing courage, resilience, and the human capacity to endure and triumph over adversity. As Samuel prepared to rest for the night, he allowed himself a rare moment of reflection and peace. The journey had been long, difficult, and dangerous, but it was also a testament to the power of determination, the importance of trust, and the value of human connection. The Old West remained a place of challenges and unpredictability, but Samuel Ortega had proven that even in the harshest conditions, courage, wisdom, and unity could lead to survival and success. Finally, under the vast expanse of stars stretching across the night sky, Samuel sat quietly, feeling the weight of the journey and the satisfaction of completion. He knew that the memories of the trials, the battles, and the lessons learned would remain with him forever. And as the wind whispered gently through the settlement, he understood that the greatest treasure was not the gold or supplies, but the courage, loyalty, and strength discovered along the way. The journey had ended, but its lessons would last a lifetime. Samuel Ortega had faced the most dangerous journey of the Old West and emerged not only alive but stronger, wiser, and forever changed. His story would become part of the history of the land, a tale of bravery, perseverance, and the unbreakable bond between those who faced danger together.